This is Russell's idea, which I think is actually a great idea. I think what we've got to do this year is maybe get back to a lot of kind of basics around, how we do what we do, each of us. I'm sure there will be similarities, but there'll be big differences as well. The whole goal setting thing is something that for a long time I've kind of battled with, because I think sometimes, I think quite often, when we ask people about their goals, it's kind of, we're putting them on the spot. And it's like, if they're not planning to climb Everest or do Ironman or hike to wherever, that they're not living a purposeful life. So I still haven't found it, but I just think, for me, I want to try and find a different word that doesn't scare people off. So I think the session today is really about kind of, how do we do this? How do we unpack this with clients? How do we prepare them for these kinds of questions? And then, and I think both initially and then down the line. What I've learned in doing this is that very often when we onboard our clients, and we have goal setting as part of our onboarding process, we do it in our second main meeting. It really is around the basic things. So it's actually almost kind of a discovery session where we finding out kind of what cars do they drive, how often do they replace them, where do they go on holiday. It's kind of like all the basic stuff. What school are their kids at? Where do they want to go to varsity? So we can kind of put these things down and then kind of monetize them, put a value on them, and then build that into the financial plan. And then if we're lucky, I think in those first meetings, sometimes we'll get people who will kind of give us a big goal that they've got, which is probably normally a holiday, or it's retiring at a certain age or whatever. So, I mean, they are goals, but for me, those are just lifestyle choices, really. And I think we've got to be very careful with the whole goal thing, because, as I said before, I think we can intimidate people and scare them off. I actually just wrote an article yesterday after listening to a podcast, and actually a book I've just started reading, which is about purpose. But that often when people retire, if we just talk about retirement for a moment, there's kind of, they think that there's going to be this life where they come and do all these things they've always wanted to do. And then often we know that in retirement, people battle with purpose. Because they can they can play golf 5 days a week, they can mountain bike, they can do all the stuff they want to do, go on overseas trips, but they still feel empty. And the whole thing, I believe that often it's the little things that are actually the big things. The big things that we put on social media and everyone sees us do on Facebook and all those things, those seem like the big things, but often it's the very little things that we do in day-to-day life. When we do get older, with our kids or our grandkids or with the people that we care about, those often turn out to be the real big things. But getting back to the actual goal setting, Russell, because you brought this up, I'm going to pick on you first. And if you can just take us through how you position goal setting with your clients. And after this, we'll move around the room. But firstly, how you position it, and then kind of how you unpack it with clients. And then finally, how to review that. Because I think it's really important that that's done at a later stage as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, thanks, Dirk, for organizing the session. All right, so I'm going to kind of give you kind of a breakdown or just of what we usually do in our goal setting. Obviously, in our process, it's more kind of like structured when we go through it with a client, but we don't like go bullet point per bullet point. So, our goal process, and just to give you some context of how we kind of reworked it as well. And I made a comment earlier on in the start of the session, is that generally most of us, especially younger planners in the industry, we taught when it comes to like goal planning, and I started at a mutual. They gave us like that one pager where it was like with some visuals and had a car, house, and all that as well. And I think it's from when I started out, it was only like kind of scraping the surface. It wasn't deeper with the client. And I think as I got exposed to lifestyle financial planning more through Dirk, um, we started asking more deeper questions. You know, for example, a typical question we get from a lot of young clients that come to us like, oh, I want to invest for wealth, you know? So, and we would ask, okay, what is wealthiness to you? And they would say like, I need R1 million. And then we would probe further, like, what is that R1 million going to give you actually? If I could give that to you today, how would it change your life? So that's where it started. Now coming to our goal process, instead of just diving deep, and I think that's another thing we also were aware of is that it can be quite overwhelming and it's also quite vague. To ask a client like, okay, what are your goals basically? You know, I think, yeah, it does help, but it's very vague and it can be overwhelming for the client or daunting because it's almost similar to like the question you get in the interview of like, where do you see yourself in 5 years or at this point? And sometimes clients can be put off or, you know, not prepared for that. So we use a lot of like medical analogy, I think just because it works quite well. But I would say when we see clients, we say, okay, what is your first, what is like your current financial pain points or worries that's stressing you out now, you know, that's keeping you up at night, you know? And I always would say like, what can we do to kind of give you that relief now and tying into like your longer term goals, which is also with building your financial foundations is, okay, now that we have baby steps, so we work out like your smaller milestones and things like that, what is the longer term picture that we're aiming for? I think another thing is also like, why did you come in? Questions we've talked about in these sessions before is like, there's so much more introspection we're doing with a lot of engaging with the client in that first session. Could be like asking like, why did you come and see me? What's stressing you out? Than just saying like, oh, let's plan for your retirement or you should be doing this. So we usually go through our goal process like that. We kind of do we call it a financial diagnosis to understand what is your current financial pain, worries, and also building your financial foundations. And then through that and asking or probing for all those questions, we find out more about the client and what are their deeper goals or their deeper financial needs. So a good example would be like, okay, Russell, I want to be wealthy or financially stable, you know, compared to how I'm feeling now. And 9 times out of 10, it's not technically tied to a product. Then we say like, okay, what does that mean for you and how is it different with your situation and how do you feel about that? And a lot of clients we would find, especially lately, I find the more you probe and they get open with you, you find the main things is that a lot of clients have financial trauma or they have, you know, a poor relationship or not the best relationship when it comes to money. And they also, you know, scared to kind of reveal that to you. So you have to create a safe space. And then it's more of like also a lot of them, whether they come from previous advisors or what they've been doing to this point, is that they unconsciously are kind of seeing financial planning or financial advice or anything like that, like ticking boxes, where it's more of like, I'm trying to be a financially responsible adult to meet the standards or expectations of society, but also family and friends. So it's first session of the goal thing before we get into goals is usually like we connect deeper with the client and then we lay out, okay, now we can lay out your smaller goals first of you want to be financially stable. What is those smaller goals? Okay, I want to settle this debt. I have a bad relationship with my credit card, like it hurts me and all that. I'm always stressed every month. Um, what is your smaller goals when it comes to saving and investing? I find it hard to save 1,000 rand a month or 2,000 rand a month. Okay, let's build that habit first. I think that's how we approach. Sorry, I know it's kind of all over the place, but we usually approach goals, the discussion with clients like that first before we just say, you need to save for retirement and you need 3 million. You know, I think that's how we approach goal process and setting with our clients. Because also we find that from a human point of view, um, it's more in bite-sized achievable pieces than just saying, oh, you need 3 or 4 million. And just in general, like when you think about it from a client's point of view, when you tell them that amount, 9 times out of 10, most clients will be like, ah, geez, I'll never get to that point. You know, it's such a huge number. So it's like, okay, you have this main goal. How do we break it down into more bite-sized pieces or goals that we can use as milestones? Sorry, Doug. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. Yeah. And then with your longer serving clients, so let's say you get them to create those goals, be it saving a certain amount or maybe something specific. How often do you then review those and kind of touch base, and because you've got to keep on reaching out more and more. How do you do that?
Yeah, 100%. So what we do with a lot of clients is like 100% agree with you. I find probably the biggest value add we don't realize that we add to clients is accountability. A lot of them, you think about it, that's probably why you asked the question, like, why couldn't you do this by yourself? So there's a reason why they come to you as well, right? So yeah, what we generally do, based on what we're doing also in the first few meetings, we kind of diagnose the client situation, but we go through this with the client. We diagnose like how complex is your financial and life phase complexity, right? And that would also determine like, okay, how many sessions do we have with you a year? So most of our clients we see, which are also pre-established professionals, we see them at least 4 times a year, and we have set sessions throughout the year, and we have one main financial plan in the beginning and one end of year financial plan meeting, and then the shorter meetings that are 3 or 6 months in between is basically more of like accountability check-in sessions to see if we're on track. And we set that, it's a kind of a structure thing we also started doing within the last year to 2 years. We set that so that we as planners have control over our schedule, because kind of like a revelation I went through over the last years is that I think as a previously younger planner, it's so easy to get looped into this trap where you become a call center for your clients. And if you don't have that structure, whenever a client messages or contacts you, you have to find the next opening. So it sets structure up, and then they know also that there's those meetings coming up. We use that to track progress, and I use SMAP as I would say, a cash flow managing tool to also track progress in terms of their habits. And if we stick into the plan, we also run through, I think also I'm learning from you, Doug, we also run through or update their cash flow. We have a 1-page cash flow template of their spending, expenses, and income. So we also run through that to make sure that they adopting the correct habits every time we have a check-in. And then what we do at the end of every year going into the new year, we do a 1-pager where we compare their before and after. So, and it's a really simple thing. It's basic like how you feel, and also in terms of rand differences, money differences as well. It shows them progress of like, okay, aside from the toggle back on your cash flow, this is the problems you had before you came to me from the beginning year, and this is how much we've achieved at this point. Because I think that's also what we found is very powerful, not in terms of just numbers, but also their relationship with money. And it kind of creates a deeper purpose or connection to their finances or whatever they implement than just focusing on the figures. Because what I found from past experience was sometimes the client becomes so focused on the target number. And yes, you're doing everything right, you invest in all that, that they forget all the milestones or achievements along the way. So what we have to do, aside from holding them accountable, is keep feeding that momentum and making them aware of like, yes, you aiming for this big goal, but don't forget to like celebrate the small things along the way. And then they start feeling better about, yeah, actually, my relationship with money and also how I handle my finances has improved drastically with you since working with you. And it's more than just the number of products they have or the number of like money that's sitting in my investment accounts. Yeah, so we set up that structure with clients way in advance, and also those 4 meetings every year. We send out we call it a year in the life planner, but it's basically all the important dates and also all our meeting sessions for the year. And it's usually around the same dates. We obviously just make slight adjustments, but it's the same dates every year. And we send that out before January of every new year. So the client then definitely knows, okay, I've got a set time with Russell and Nisim or Monique every year on these sessions. There's structure, and I feel there's a proper plan that I'm being held accountable to.
Oh, great. Thanks, Russell. Brian, you commented, so I'm going to ask you to chat next. Please, just to share.
Sure, thank you. So what I meant by the comment was that what I've learned over time is to ask someone what their goals are is kind of useless. There's really low-hanging fruit that we can all help people with, like the whole thing of like a car or whatever the case may be. That's a very straightforward question, but over the years, what like we've got kind of a scripted set of questions that I generally want to cover in the first meeting we have with established clients. So what I mean by established clients is they've contracted with us, we've sussed them out, we've pitched, they've accepted, and now we're working together. And so the first meeting we have is called All About You. And it really just says what's on the can. It's all about them. And what we do is we ask a lot of questions to understand where their values are, what are the things they enjoy doing, what are the things that they don't mind spending money on. So they spend money on things and it doesn't bother them. What are the things that they hate spending money on? When are they happiest? What brings them happiest? What does happiness look like? What does fulfillment look like? And so there's these various questions that we ask. What happens is the answers to those questions will probably lead to another question, if we're listening properly, and we'll ask a little bit further into that. And what we get out of that after about an hour and a half to 2 hours with the family is an understanding of the things they want to do with the time that they have. Normally often what happens is they might say things like, oh, we've never actually thought that through like this, or we've never verbalized this before as a family. And then, but it's a way that they bring it to the top, the surface. Because what I tend to find is when you ask someone for the goals, they're going to default to the things that they think they should be planning for. The things that they think they should be planning for is, I probably have to own a house. But our clients own houses, but, I've got to probably, my retirement's got to look like this, or, whatever the case may be. So when we ask questions, like, for example, I might ask a business owner, when you're not at your office, running this business and managing staff, what do you enjoy doing? And then, if I think of a client, they said, oh, I love going with my wife and we just love walking. I'm like, oh, where do you enjoy walking most? Oh, we'll actually book weekends away. And we haven't actually done it for a while, but we enjoy weekends away and we like going over mountains. We like hiking. Okay, cool. So, then you go deeper into that, and then you find out that they've always wanted to do the Camino Trail and the Everest Trail, and they've always thought about it, but they've never planned for it. Well, now they don't know it, but we've taken that down as a goal. And so then what we do is when we plan with them, when we move on to the cash flow planning, we already put these goals in place. So we don't say to them, this will be your goal now. We put the goals in place and we talk them through their financial, the starting premise of their financial plan, the starting point. And then we've got the goals, these dots, and then we explain each goal. And they've never asked us to remove one. So it's always been a case of like, geez, normally the feedback is, wow, you guys listened. It was our AI that was actually listening. And then what we did was we've summarized all the goals, put them in place. We got the frequency generally down quite accurately, or when that should happen. Like, a client once wanted to run a marathon on every continent besides Antarctica. And so they'd already done 2. So then you just ask questions about, so how often, how regularly would you want to do this kind of trip? And they'll say, well, I'm studying at the moment to do board exams, etc. So I can't do it for the next couple of years. And what they don't know is they're giving you their goals. And so what we do is we build that up that way. We also just always have that, we always end off the meeting with that big, hairy, audacious goal question, which is, if money was no object, what is the thing you've always wanted to do or buy that you never thought you could? For about half of our clients, that's actually attainable. And so we put that into the plan and they actually can attain that. But once again, it's something that they thought was out of reach. So it's to ask someone what their goals are. If you ask me now what all my goals are, I'll be very stressed. Like, I wouldn't know what to say. I would probably just give you answers so you can ask me something else. But if you have a 2-hour conversation or hour and a half conversation, and then at the end of it, you think, wow, that was quite cool. You made me talk about myself for 2 hours. Now I feel really good about myself. And then afterwards, we just got lots of data, lots of information that we can, with them, quantify. So, for example, if I go back to the couple who likes walking, it's like, well, fine. Now, I've gone online and Googled a little bit, and I see the Camino thing, you can buy packages. What have you looked at? Oh, no, we read an article once in a magazine, and it said it cost this much. Okay, we ballpark. It's 80,000 Rand for the 2 of you. Okay, let's put that as a goal. And that is how we create the goals for a family over their lifetime.
Okay, great. So, I mean, what I'm hearing is what's really important is listening. So not just hearing, but actually listening, and then kind of listening through what they're saying and interpreting that and making a note of that. Yeah, I mean, we try and do that where we kind of call it, I forget what we call it, but we create like a live profile of that client. So that years later, you can, before a meeting, you can actually just go through that and you've got all the softer points, all those things which are important. Because I think you're right. I think often they'll verbalize stuff in a roundabout way and that won't actually pin it down. And bringing them back to that, is important. And then also showing that they can actually do that. I mean, we've got some great stories over the years where we've helped people achieve things that they didn't think was possible. We also use a lot of questions. So it's kind of like, I suppose it's like before you're going to run a marathon or a sprint, you warm up, you kind of stretch and you jog a bit. And I think that's what the questions do, by asking softer questions. Like we ask questions like, when were you most comfortable with your money situation, and where are you now, and what would you like to see different? And, be it in your day or be it in your month or your family situation, and that, because then they start kind of loosening those emotional muscles that when we do eventually, we've got like charts of like 10 different areas, life areas that we then go into. So like holidays, they've already said something, or like they say family time, what does that mean? Well, a holiday, and where would you like to go? So they've given you a lot of those answers. So yeah, I think we work similarly, but I think it is really important to, and then what I've also learned is really important is when we do the next meeting, which is generally where we're presenting kind of where they are, we're still not building the plan, but we're kind of getting there, is when you start the meeting off by just running through those goals again, is in as much detail as possible, like use personal names of theirs or their kids or a specific place to go or a vehicle or whatever. Because often that's a week or 2 or 3 later. They think, geez, this person was actually listening. So there's 2 sides. The one is we want them to know we're listening, but the other part is we really, really do need to listen. And I know where we've made mistakes sometimes is when we do reviews, we kind of just talking, the clients send their budget in, okay, fine, we haven't changed the goals in 3 years. And it's like, that's actually criminal, because 3 years is a long time in anyone's life these days, and things will have changed. Firstly, certain goals would have been achieved, so they probably need to get spoken about, or they would have disappeared, or in other words, they're not important anymore, or they've changed. Because I mean, that's real life. That's what happens. So I've learned we probably need to spend more time in our reviews actually kind of redoing that whole goal setting session. I've learned that you got to do it at the longest you can leave it is 3 years, especially from when you start, because when you start, there's a lot of stuff you got to get right. So Russell was talking about all those little things about getting saving levels to where they should be, and sorting out, housekeeping like wills and trusts and all that stuff. But generally that's better done. And after 3 years, they've got a kind of an understanding of how you work. But then to go back to the goals, and again, what we've even done is we use glass boards, and you take a picture of that, and we kind of we rewrite that up and say, well, this is what was up here 2 or 3 years ago. What's changed, because it just brings them back into that fold. So, but I think it's really important that we understand that. I mean, number one, I think the word goal is the wrong word, but we all understand what that means. So we use it, but also to redo those on an ongoing basis, because otherwise we're not really adding much value.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I must say, I don't believe I have much wisdom to give at all, but I do think that I've learned, don't mention the word goals to clients. So if a meeting is called goal setting, imagine you come to that meeting as a client now, right? Now, probably coming to the meeting thinking, Dirk and his team, or Russell and his team, or Mel, or whatever, are expecting me to give a lot of goals. So there's probably going to be a bit of like a shucks, like what is going to happen in this meeting? I'm expected to perform now, so I've got to dance well for them. And then if you might feel like, if you leave that meeting and you don't have clearly defined goals, you might feel this is not working out so well. I thought by the end of this, I'm going to have goals set for me. So goals is a bad word because goals is very finite. So I would say, I've got to sell my house in 2 years' time because I'm moving to a retirement village. That's a very finite goal. To live a fulfilling life, I mean, how long is a piece of string, right? So we're very intentional about mentioning that meeting it's all about you. We just want to find out more about you, what you value, what's important to you, what are the things you want to do with your life, what kind of life you want to live. And we brief them with that in an email before that meeting. There's no mention of the word goal. There's no pressure on them. We say there's nothing you can prepare. So let's just have a conversation. And then afterwards, they don't know they've goal set. It's only the next meeting where our financial planning system calls them goals. And we put them there and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys listened. The nice thing about also using AI is that I can miss things, and I will miss things because I'm a guy, I can't do two things at once. But what I'll do is I'll go into the AI and you ask the AI a lot of questions. So when Dirk was speaking in this meeting, what was his most pressing desire? And the AI will list 10 things in order of what it picked up due to inflections, what you stated the most, the words you repeated. You can take that and look at your notes and say, okay, I was wrong about number 7, but this is flipping good. Okay, awesome. And then you start planning with that. And that can also be your list of goals that you can start mapping out. And another thing is every year when we plan beforehand, we send clients a survey to ask them about their bucket list. It's one of 10 questions. And one of the questions is the bucket list, the list of things they want to do while they're still with us and how sure they are about what it is. And if that rating out of 10 is lowish, they've obviously forgotten since we did this what those things were. So that's a good opportunity to remind and re-educate. But like you said, Dirk, to revisit this regularly. Just last week, we had a meeting with a client. She's been with us for just over a year. So it was her first annual forward planning meeting. So we redid all the planning. And she gets share options from a company. And she was asking, should she take the shares now, invest them, should she leave them where they are, etc. Now, this is speelgoed geld in her plan. This doesn't exist. So this isn't in her plan. Her plan at the moment, she gets into triple figures. Then she said, oh, yeah, well, what should I do with this? Because, my goals are there, they're all met. And then I just brought out the first meeting we had with her and the notes. And it said, you want to travel around the world on a cruise just because you said you can travel around the world on a cruise. And you want to project manage building a house from the ground up. This money can do that for you. So it was like, oh, yes. Yeah, and then she said, I was thinking about that the other day, actually. So we help the clients live the nice lives. So we've got to listen and take notes and then come back to them regularly and not just, I suppose, focus on the numbers the whole time.
Oh, great. Brian, what AI, I know everyone's wondering, what AI do you guys use for that?
I use Fathom Note Taker. And the nice thing about Fathom is I've read the T's and C's. I am one of those people. They don't give that information out to anyone besides themselves, and they don't give it to like ChatGPT to help it learn how to its modeling. So Fathom's great. It's very interactive. They store all the videos for you as well, and you can download them as well. So if you're going to cancel with them, you can download them. It'll be tedious, but it frees up your server, but you don't need that video on your server anymore. But the nice thing is you can ask the questions the whole time. So when we pitch for clients, we will ask, what did Dirk and his wife really want us to do for them? And then it gives like a very well, like you say, give me one sentence, 3 lines, no more, and it'll give you an answer. And you look at your notes, you're like, flipping out, that sums it up so well. And that can be like their mission statement. You slap it on your pitch, and then it's like, oh, wow. And 3 times in a row, I've had clients say, geez, like you get me. Or you're the only male that ever listens to a woman. That's the one I got from someone. So we don't need to tell them, it's AI, but it's just to enhance, I think, the experience for the client and add value.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, man. Okay, who else wants to, Mel? You've been doing this a long time. I'm sure you've experimented with different ways in getting this out of your clients. Can you share with us, please?
So I don't think I've ever asked a client about goals. I hate the word goals as well. I just, it takes me back to my days when I studied marketing and SMART goals and all of that blah, 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 stuff that has not changed for 100 years. But what I do, I think the IWP program does make things a whole lot easier. So what I do is, you know, obviously goal setting, and I'll use the goal setting in this context with this meeting, but goals are also important. But I don't think I've ever had a client come to me and say, I have something that I want to work towards. Most of our clients come to us because they've got either, you know, they want to retire or they're not happy with somebody. So there's very specific reasons that they come to us with. So I think the planning element we sort out first, to obviously sort out their concern. But then with the IWP software, what I love about it is you get the opportunity to say to the clients, and like Brian said through listening, I mean, you know, in the last 2 years, we've helped 2 clients. I mean, the one client, she wanted to do the Camino trip her whole life. And her and I were just actually chatting, and this came up. But what I find with goals, people do generally know what they want to do, but they don't know how to do it. And they don't know the financial impact of the how on their financial plan. So, for example, this client that her whole life has wanted to do the Camino trip, she knew what she wanted. Her reason why she's never sort of researched it or done it herself is she always thought she didn't have enough money. So that element of planning, I don't actually build it in either as a, I mean, I build it in as a goal in IWP, but what we then did is just show her, okay, so right now let's work with what you've got. You know, she didn't have money to go and save another 10,000 Rand or whatever. So the planning there, because if you think about it, a lot of clients don't have that extra cash to go and save for a goal. I mean, most people, I don't know, I find we work with middle to high net worth clients. So my high net worth clients have either got so much cash in their businesses, or they in any case go on 4 holidays a year to Sweden and to Switzerland, and you know that's not even a goal for them, that's their lifestyle. But clients like your average clients who don't have that spare cash every month, what we do is with the lifestyle planning, we actually look at their current situation, and all I do is I reallocate funds. And we might say, okay, well, let's go a bit more aggressive here, or let's stop maybe some of your contributions here for a period of time, but then you've got to agree that when you come back, you've got to pick it up, and we maybe put an extra 5% to 10% increase on those. So there's just, I think it's just, you know, like accountants call it clever accounting. I think it's just clever financial planning and just helping that client. And this client actually went and did the Camino trip last year, and something that she never thought was possible. So I think a lot of the times clients know what they want to do, and I think we become like an accountability partner. Or so I mean, I've got another client who, she's retired. She wants to study. She's got an opportunity in the field that she works to study this course. It's a 6-month program. I mean, there's only 2 of them in South Africa. And once again, whether you see it as a goal or you know, you've got to look at the trade-offs and what those trade-offs are, and if the trade-offs are financially viable. So with her, we've actually, I'm paying her an income at the moment from her retirement fund. We actually retired her out of it. So I'm paying her an income, but then she's got the potential after 6 months, because in this program that she's in, she actually, while she's training, I mean, while she's studying, she is a, what do you call it? She does on-site auditing as well, so in a very specific field. But after that, she's got the potential to earn 150,000 Rand a month. So sometimes you need to just, I think the client just sees muddy waters, And all you've got to do is your magic and maybe just put something in there just to clear that muddy water, and that they can see the wood before the trees, or the trees before the wood, whatever that saying is. So I just think, I don't know, you've just got to use your own discretion and your own instincts when you're working with clients. But big thing is listening. You know, I've got another client who he wants to go to somewhere in Poland. I've written the name down. I went and did some research, and when I saw him again, we've got a little presentation that we do to our clients. When I saw him again, I actually brought this up, and he was like, "What? You listened?" And I said, "Yes, we're going to make your dreams come true." So he's retiring now in March, and it's one of the things that I've allocated in his planning to go on holiday to this place. It's a weird name. So yeah, I just think that's what I'm saying. Clients know what they want. You've just got to try and get it out of them, but they don't know the how. And I think we're there to help them do the how.
Sorry, just remuting. Yeah, I know. Thanks, Mel. I think, yeah, it's important that we all do it differently. And again, I mean, what you're showing there is that by listening properly, you're helping your clients uncover those things that they want to do. They're just not always able to verbalize it. Shannon, I'm going to pick on you, and then I'm going to go for one of the young guns, Peter, afterwards.
Okay. Dirk, with this whole thing, goal setting, and like Mel says, clients know what they want. Well, they think they know what they want. Something that I use as a tool to get this whole life planning process going, and I don't talk about goals at all. It's about planning their life, and it's about the ongoing planning of their life. And the one thing that I use that I find really helps clients open up their minds and expand their thoughts, and that's the 3 George Kinder questions. I don't know if you're all aware of the George Kinder questions, but for those that aren't aware of them, I'll read them out. And first one is: imagine you're financially secure, that you have enough money to take care of your needs now and in the future. How would you live your life? Would you change anything? And here it's about unlimited assets, and you tell the client, let their mind go, and let them write it down, and just really let their mind go. Second question then is, now imagine you visit your doctor who tells you that you only have 5 to 10 years to live. You won't ever feel sick. You will have no notice of the moment of your death. What will you do with the time that you have remaining? And this assumes with the assets that you have. And again, now all of a sudden you start seeing the client start to really think about the kind of life that they're living. And then the last question, finally, imagine that your doctor shocks you with the news that you only have 24 hours to live. Notice what your feelings are and how you confront your mortality. Look back on your life. What did you miss? What would you have done differently? And, I find, as I say, these questions really start to expand the client's minds, and they start to take a different view and different perspective on it. So that's a tool that I use. Another tool that I use with clients is I say to them, sit down and again, transfer your mind into the future and let your 80-year-old self write a letter back to you now about life and how life was and how life is. And again, it just helps clients open up their minds. And then something that I use as a tool to benchmark our progress is a question that I ask clients in our meetings. If we're having this conversation 3 years from now, what must happen in your life to feel happy with your progress? And every time we meet with the client, the question's asked again. So it's continually rolling out. So those are the kinds of tools that I use in terms of planting seeds with the process.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've haven't used the questions, but I know that they do work well. I think what we're learning very quickly is that everyone uses different techniques. I think however is really, really important is we've got to be getting these things out of clients in some way or another. Otherwise, all we're doing is an initial diagnosis. If when you're doing proper lifestyle planning, and again, sorry, just to go back, I don't believe that anyone can do this kind of planning if you're not doing cash flow planning. And I've said it 1,000 times. If you don't do proper cash flow planning, it is impossible to do proper financial planning. Okay, don't even call it lifestyle planning. Just it's any sort of planning. If you look at any business, anything, there's got to be a plan, and the plan's got to be based on, in this case, cash flow, because that shows us what's possible. I mean, if the client you see has got way more money than they need, it's okay, like, what are we going to spend the money on? I mean, that's another way of getting to the whole thing. I just want to share quickly, because this is something we did a while ago, and it really was a little bit of effort, but it was really cool, and the client loved it. In the PowerPoint, this was like part of his goals. That's one thing he wanted to do, was go around. So we built a camper, we called it Freedom, and also he wanted the new Tesla. So we put that there as well, and put his name in it. And it takes a little bit of effort, but I mean, I know for that client, it like really blew him away. It was like really cool, because it just showed that we actually had taken time about this. And what it does then, it makes them think, shit, I've got to spend time for these meetings as well, because we're doing it. I think what's really important as well, and again, it's something we don't do enough of, is giving report back and feedback on the progress that you've made over the time of the relationship with the client. Again, I wrote an article a couple of weeks back, and I was just thinking about this. And I thought of 2 clients, and so regardless of goals and whatever, they've all done stuff in the time. The one for 7 years, the one for 8 years, been me working with them. But the one couple had, when we started working, they had 1.8 million rand in retirement savings. 7 years later, they've got 12 million rand. Okay, and they've been living life. They haven't skimmed or anything. They've just, it's what having a plan does. These are guys who they're shareholders in a business. They've got focus. The other chap had 2 million rand saved. He's now got 22 million rand 8 years later. We've surpassed how much he needs to retire already, because he's still got shares in his business, which have a big value. And the goal was to retire now 2 years ago. And because they re-engineered the business and they're doing so well, and he's actually brought in youngsters to do more of the work that he doesn't want to do, it's freed him up, and it's extended his working career from the point of view that he feels he can handle it and he enjoys it. But it's allowed him to build wealth, which is already way beyond what the original plan was. And I think showing this progress is really, really important. And even in those 2 cases, we're meeting the one guy next week, so I'm going to show him for sure. But I think it's important because, I've got a brother-in-law who's an actuary, and, we'll talk about the 1% charge or whatever it is. And he said, what you really got to do is you got to show progress on your clients. So show them, this is where you are, this is where you were, and then this is where you are now. And I think when you're looking at that, in those 2 cases I've mentioned, I mean, where one client's got 11 times more wealth in 8 years, he doesn't give a shit what he's paid us or paying us, really, because we've significantly changed his position in life. And that's really what our job is at the end of the day. Peter, I know I'm picking on you because I know that you're newer to the profession. I also know that you've entered in a very different way to most of us. And I know that you've done extremely well. So yeah, if you could share with us, please.
Thank you, Dirk. And I think my approach to goal setting is probably a bit flawed, to be honest. I approach it very much from an academical point of view. As I now studied further, it was very much trying to get to the solution as quickly as possible, the calculation side of things. And the way that I approached it was during the onboarding process, where I've got like an Excel sheet that I send clients to complete the assets, liabilities, income, expenses. And in that Excel sheet, I'll also ask planning questions. How much you want to provide for your kids, how much you need in retirement, stuff like that to do the calculations, but also the behavioral side. What is your best financial decision, worst decision, greatest concerns? And I found that clients are able to answer that, but it's very much on a first kind of level, superficial level answer, where I missed an opportunity to go deeper into those types of concerns. If they say, I also have that question, if you have five years left to live, what you're going to do, and that kind of condense their values and the stuff that's most important to them, and that helps me to then start the conversation at that point to take it deeper later on. But I felt like having a conversation around goals, whether you mention it's goals or not, it's much more valuable than just getting the information and then using that in the tool and putting a plan in place and say let's go. So I think I probably rushed past that with the idea to get to the solution quicker, where now I'm a bit more intentional to have a full meeting on just goals, and we just start unpacking different elements. I have a rough framework that I use. There's this acronym called FORMS: family, occupation, recreation, money, and then I add the S, spirituality, and then stuff around that like travel, education, legacy planning. So I've got about 4 or 5 questions on each one of those components that I have open next to me, and then I'll start asking questions, and then I just see how the conversation flows from there onwards. And then that is much more valuable when we then go into the goal set, the cash flow modeling tool, because then we have identified maybe 4 or 5 goals that they then can save towards, and then in the next session we can go and quantify that and see how it makes sense in their overall financial situation. So yeah, I think I've learned a lot in the process that financial planning is not only theoretical, it is very much an emotional and behavioral thing, and that's something that I need to upskill my knowledge on as well, reading past the numbers, but definitely helping the client to verbalize and understand what they actually want in life is very important, and that can only be done through a conversation. It can't be telling them, because I found also when I send clients the goal setting exercise to do at home, they can take weeks to get that done, even months, because it's just they've kind of have this mental block to do it. So it's very valuable, I think, to have that conversation, and that also builds trust, and you kind of become sticky in that situation where the client now trusts you to take them to that goal. So it builds on that long-term ongoing relationship that we try to build with clients. So yeah, that's kind of my journey through goal setting, but definitely have a lot to learn, making a lot of notes today. So thank you so much for the session.
We've all got a lot to learn, I promise you. Everyone's got a lot to learn. And I think what you brought up is really, really relevant, that we can have these processes set out, but we still need to trust our guts as well. So, I mean, I'll still get it with certain clients. You can pick up very quickly that they really don't want to go deep. Other clients are like flipping, diving in after a couple of questions about what's important to you in life. I mean, so you've got to understand and remember that we're building a long-term relationship. That's the only thing we should be doing. And in a relationship like we would have with any partner, you know, some people take longer to warm up. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just our personalities. That's who we are. And also maybe there's stuff going on in people's lives where right now they can't think about where am I going to be in 5 years' time, because they've got to get this thing sorted out right now. And once we give them that comfort. So a really big intuitive thing is how are we able to read the room and understand, let's push a little bit deeper, or actually, you know what, let's just let them go now. We want them to feel comfortable. But we can make a note of that and then bring it back later. And also, so you as you implying, you can be as educated as you want, but you also still need to be comfortable within yourself to be able to ask those questions. So, you know, if you're sitting in someone who looks like you, and what I mean that is your age, you're going to be a lot more comfortable asking some of the questions than you might be sitting in front of a 63-year-old couple who are maybe recently remarried. You know, it's a situation that's foreign to you. So you're probably it's going to be a bit more difficult for you to dive in deep there. So I think we've really got to listen to that and read the room. Dylan, you got your hand up.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think it was myself who was pushing for this in the last session, and from my perspective, it was more around goals on like for our practices and how to grow our businesses. But I'm actually so happy that the session turned out this way because it's something I'm really struggling with at the moment. I think just the phase that my personal business or practice is in, it's a heavy growth phase at the moment, and trying to balance, like, I was very inspired by what Russell said earlier, the way that he structures the 4 meetings a year, and he has quite, it seems like he has fairly rigid structures in terms of goal setting set for his clients. Whereas for me, I feel like at the same time, I'm trying to push every single day on bringing in prospects and getting the right clients into the business at the same time, because we have a ton of clients, but not all of them are the clients that I need to be working with. So it's always like that trade-off of what am I spending my time on. I love goal setting. I love getting a bit deeper with clients. I love talking about just life and like growing a connection with clients. But the reality is, when your time starts getting more and more diluted via you trying to bring in clients to make your business sustainable, to spend more time on the clients who need it or who you should be spending time on, it just it feels very convoluted in my head. And I think the risk is that I have picked up really cool clients over the last 2 years, and some great clients that I want to work with for a very long time. And I'm scared that I'm going to get to a point where they feel a bit neglected or they're not getting enough time spent with them. So I think for some people in the room, it might feel more relevant because they might be in a similar stage. And for others, you might have had long-standing clients who are paying you well, who you can re-strategize on and spend a lot of time on. But I'd love to hear everyone's just point of view with regards to this, because it's something I really want to improve on this year. I'm going through quite a rigorous client segmentation process as we speak at the moment.
Yeah, Dylan, I think it's very valid, and I think a lot in the room are surprised that you've got kind of sounds like too many clients at your age, which sounds like a great problem to have. But I think you're quite right. I mean, I'm at a different phase in my career, and I see where exactly the same thing. I spend too much time with people who don't pay us the way we need to be paid. And look, there's a whole host of issues there. But I think segmenting your clients is really important, not only from what they are currently giving you in income now, because we're all running businesses, guys. So just we can chill about this. I battled for years, but at the end of the day, money pays the bills. But not only what they're bringing us now, but also potentially what they can. So you do look at that person's personal setup, or their career potential and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, because at the end of the day, I really don't believe that a financial planner can probably serve more than 100 to 120 clients. Well, I know we can use systems and have support and all that, but I think what's really important, what I thought about when you were talking was, when you're doing these meetings and so let's not call it goal setting, let's just call it like where we're listening to clients and that. We really, really need to be present, like really present. You almost need to prepare yourself before. You got to think about who the person or the family, the couple is, what challenges they've been through, like really get inside them so that you can be present in the meeting. And I think that's also going to help them kind of open up more. And then, Dylan, also, one thing I've learned is your clients that you love working with and that are good clients, whatever that means to you, meet them as often as you can. I hear so much older guys in the industry saying, "Oh, I've only got so much time, and this will, you know what? Then you're not doing lifestyle planning, I can guarantee you." But especially when you start a relationship, I would much rather meet a client in person than send an email if possible, or have a phone call, because every time you meet, it's an opportunity to keep on building on that personal relationship. The best way you build a relationship is by sitting across the table for them or next to them, and be able to look them in the eye and shake their hand. I think it's really, really important. So you should, in your segmentation, I'd probably say you need to look at what Russell's doing and say, okay, because I mean, our top clients, we see them even more than that. I mean, you really become such an intricate part of their lives, whether it's a WhatsApp. I mean, the number of connections we have is just, you read about all this marketing, like an email is a connection and a Christmas card and a birthday card. In this world, I'm not saying that's rubbish, but that's mostly bullshit. I mean, people want human connection here. And I think that is where we can send newsletters and emails, and they do kind of keep us front of mind. But there's no shortfall for actually having that human touch, even if it's a Teams call or a Zoom call. It really does make a difference. Anyone else want to comment on what Dylan chatted to us about? Russell, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, Dylan, if I can share, like, and I'll be also like open and honest with you guys as well. So like, I think, Dylan, what you're going through, look, it's a nice thing to have. It's like you have so many clients to serve or see. And I was also in that similar position a few years back, and we did a lot of like client segmentation as well within the last year, because we rebuilt our whole advice process. And not technically in a bad way, but like I would say, like Monique will even say, like within the last 2 to 3 months, we actually, I wouldn't say fire. Well, maybe you could call it basically fired. We fired about 10 to 15 clients basically off our client base. Because I had the realization, especially when I rebuilt my whole advice process last year, and we weren't chasing new clients. So we were still profitable as a practice, but we rebuilt our whole advice process and also got really nitty gritty down to like the type of clients we want to work with. And what I came as a realization myself, what was happening before, especially before I brought Monique involved, is that, yeah, there's only so many clients you can serve, in your lifetime and also on a day-to-day basis. And eventually it's going to get to a point where, which is what I experience, is that you start burning out almost, or you find like you can't even get through to the work because you're seeing so many clients. And especially for the ones that don't fit your profile. And I also picked this up from Brian when he once shared, and we started doing as well. It's like, what is your ideal client? And it doesn't have to be only net worth. Could be like, are they coachable? That's a big thing for us as well, because we're like, if we are just being used to implement products and you don't want to be coachable and change your financial habits or behavior, it's not really going to help your situation from a lifestyle planning point of view. So we have that list of like, what do we look for in a client? And it's also qualifying the client as well. Because what I realized is that eventually, and that's before I set up the structure within the last year to 2 years with clients, of like having like set meetings throughout the year. And look, that for a lot of those clients we enjoy working with, we also say like, you're not, you can still reach out to us if an emergency come up and we can set up an ad hoc session. But what I was finding in the past is that because I didn't have that structure and I didn't segment my clients, I inadvertently became a call center for my clients, and my time was being owned by my clients. It was even eating into my own personal time, where I felt like burnt out and drenched in like work, and like I couldn't get a chance to breathe. So I think one thing I picked up is that, which also comes when you're a young planner or you're young in the field, is that you have a scarcity mentality of like, I need to sign these clients because I might not get a client tomorrow, like a poverty type of mindset. When in actual fact, it's completely okay. You're not meant to serve every client, and there's more than enough clients out there for you. And what I also started realizing, especially after like reading and listening to Dan Martell, which is another entrepreneur, is that without realizing that you start giving your time so much that you can inadvertently get to a scaling problem where you resent the work you do because it's painful, basically. You're not working with the clients that you enjoy working. And an important question I started realizing and ask myself is like, for those clients that we fired or terminated, right? I started asking, am I looking forward to these sessions that I'm having with this client? And 9 times out of 10, I wasn't, and I also wasn't present because it was those type of clients that didn't value as much or weren't paying me, and were on the old fee-based model. And also in the sense that you tried to coach them but they wouldn't listen, so you feel like you're hitting a wall all the time. And I think that also lays into like why you're not meant to serve a client. So you either have to set those structures in place, because like Dirk says, and that's what I learned from him as well, you can't serve say, a couple hundred clients and do proper lifestyle planning. Eventually it's going to be more of like product selling. So and you also end up burning out yourself. So you either segment your clients and you already serve a certain number of clients or a certain type of clients, or the other thing that you would have to do is you have to try and fast track train other people to work underneath you to help manage that load. Otherwise, you kind of going to be burned from either side. And it's either what's generally going to happen is that the client's not going to really see as much value in you, or they're going to start demanding more. But in your side, you'll be like, but you're not even paying me sufficiently for my time. And then it's kind of like a resentful, kind of like awkward situation as well. And then you also feel guilty as a planner because a lot of this is very personalized of like, I'm not giving my best, but at the same time, I'm not enjoying this partnership relationship. So I think segmenting is important. And then, yeah, you either have to limit how many or what type of clients you can take or hire more people to take on that load. And I would just honestly say, like, we've downsized quite a bit of our client book. And this morning, we actually turned away a client that came to us by referrals. And I had a first meeting with her, laid out a proposal. She seemed like a good client, but she said she's only interested in like putting products in place. But when I did the first diagnosis, she had a lot of financial behavior habits and behavior problems, and she wasn't interested in the coaching. So I know there's problems down the line. And I just peacefully said, I wish you all the best. Unfortunately, we can't work together. And also realizing that just by turning down a client, you're also getting your time back to work on, doesn't have to be personal, but it's time for you to work on your business or practice itself that will attract more of the higher type of quality clients that you are generally looking for. So yeah, just that's my thoughts on it through my own personal experience. And I would say you will still be, without realizing, you end up being more profitable down the long term, and you enjoy working with the people that you have as clients.
Yeah, Russell, Nick Murray talks about your arc. You've got a limit number of executive rooms on your arc and who you're going to give them to. And, when someone's not fitting in with the rest of the crowd and someone else is knocking on the door, then you simply swap rooms, and we have to do that. And I know that it's difficult to do when we start off building. But again, I can promise you down the line that it ends up becoming a problem. Because I know Brian solved that problem by charging the way that he does, but even then, even if we got clients who are paying us, it's not always a happy relationship. I've got 2 or 3 at the moment where I'm not sure. I need to have chats with them and say, like, are we going to continue with this? Because I'm not able to help you because you're not getting back to me, you're not doing this, or we're not meeting regularly. And I know that at some points you're going to come back and you're going to tell me, you're going to highlight this to me, even though I've been emailing you and WhatsApping you. So at some point you've also got to, so are you going to wait for him to break up, or are you going to be the one to give them the bad news? And it is difficult when they are well-paying clients, but you're quite right. I mean, if it's not a happy working relationship, it poisons your mind. Those are the clients you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning about. And then also what they do is they erode your confidence. And we talk about our clients being vulnerable, but they can only be vulnerable if we're vulnerable. If we're not vulnerable in what we do, then you're not doing your job. It's quite simple. And for some people, that's a lot harder than for others. And that's why I was saying to Peter, a lot of that stuff can take time. And that's why also you'll only work with certain people, because other people you don't want to be vulnerable with, and that's absolutely fine. So I think I don't know how many of you guys read Nick Murray, but you really should. But you got to think about your arc. Who do you let on, and who don't you want on, which is probably more important.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say, because I'm sure everyone else also wants to jump in, but like another thing that I picked up from Brian, because we kind of talk quite a lot and we soundboard ideas, is that our industry is tough, right? And we also have issues with clients sometimes, and it's difficult and all that. But like, what also was an empowering moment I had within the last year to 2 years, especially when we rebuilt our process, is that it's so easy to also blame, and there is liability there for like product providers and how the industry or the profession is. But at the end of the day, especially with the client, you have to remember you set the cadence or the environment for that. So if you don't have like structure or your own standards or measures in place, like how you want to run the practice, and also like to Dirk said as well, it doesn't have to be a fee thing. It could be like a communication thing where like you email and you engage with the client, but they don't respond and they come back to you like 6 months. Can't work with a client like that, you know? And if you just allow that and you allow your clients to take over as well, taking your time, you have no one else to blame except yourself, because if you're not setting the environment or the cadence for that, you enabling that behavior in a sense. So what I picked up from Brian as well with like when we rebuild our process and our advice process, as well as like our onboarding process for clients and going forward, is that we setting that environment or structure from the start, and we also at the same time are managing the client's expectations as well. You know? And it goes both ways. We're working in partnership with the clients. I think that's another thing you set up, is that you make the client know like this is a partnership. It's not me working for you. We're working here together. So if you're not as invested in your plan and your finances as I am, then why are we wasting each other's time? You know?
Yeah, again, I think it's about being present in that relationship, in the meeting, but also, knowing. Yeah, so I think going through your list of clients and identifying, like, firstly, who the people you get great relationships with, and those relationships don't take a lot of work. They're really, now and then there's something technical, but normally that kind of gets sorted up initially, or we know it's coming, so we've got time to plan for it. So, a lot of the work that we do is upfront. It's very seldom that something's going to happen that we never saw coming and we haven't at least thought about and processed, that we're not able to deal with. Like when clients retire, we know before what it's going to look like roughly, so we know 80% of it. We know, number one, it can work, and number two, like where the income is going to come from for the first few years or whatever, that kind of thing. So yeah. Anyone else got anything to add? Freddie, you've been very quiet. And guys, listen, talking about pre and present, I know you guys aren't going to like this, but in future, guys, if you don't have your cameras on, I don't want you guys in the session, because it's quite difficult. I don't know who is in, who isn't in. You can always listen to the recording. You don't have to turn your cameras on now. I'm just saying moving forward, because I think we're all giving up our time here to share. So, if we're going to be present, unless you've got a serious bandwidth problem, I'm going to kind of start insisting that we have our cameras on. I think it's only fair to everyone. Don't worry about it today, but in future, guys. Freddie. Oh, sorry, no, Freddie. Sorry, Freddie. It was Freddie and Ferdy, bro. Freddie probably thought I was talking about him. So you can both answer. Okay, anybody else?
Sorry, Dirk, my camera
No
isn't
problem.
working today, so I don't know
Okay.
what's wrong with
No
it,
problem.
but I'll do something. Yeah, so there's a lot of things being said today, and I'm also taking a lot of notes because, yeah, everybody is doing it a bit different, but it sounds like the base of what we're trying to do is always the same, and that is why it's so much learning to do in this group and so valuable. Yeah, something that I could maybe add is, yeah, so as you've previously said, it's like sometimes it's easy because clients want to share and they already know what they want to do with their careers and going forward and goals and whatever. So that is quite easier conversations to have with them and to work with them and to go forward. But sometimes, as Brian also said, if you were to ask me what my goals are for the future, yeah, I almost go blank and I don't know what to do. So these questions of George Kinder and so on, and everybody else helps a lot with those conversations and to help the clients think about their futures and so on. So what I use is we've got also 5 almost pillars that we use: community well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being, and so on. that I use so that the client can think about their physical well-being, their social well-being, where they want to fit in, where they want to go, what do they enjoy about life, and so on. So we just work with the behavioral stuff to see that the client can decide for themselves what they value in life and what they want to achieve and where they want to go. So that helps us to almost unlock the client's own thoughts and dreams and so on. So yeah, that's what we use in our conversations.
Okay, great. Thanks, Freddie. Thanks. Anyone else have anything to add?
Morning, Dirk. Sorry,
Hi,
my
Freddie.
mic wasn't on earlier. So
No problem.
yeah, good morning to all. So I'm quite new on the sessions. So probably the only guy here from Namibia. So yeah, Dirk, thanks for adding me. And yeah, I really appreciate being part of the group and learning quite a lot. So interesting. So we always also have some nice sessions with clients that we do chat. But I think I get a lot of tips from all the participants. It's from Russell and Brian, the guys speaking. That how to go and put that into your planning, or basically into your program. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate it a lot, and I enjoyed. Thanks.
Great, Freddie. Yeah, I think the people who are doing it easier, if I may say, probably have it built into their process. So it's something we've gone through before, and I think it's really important. Having I mean, I learned, I've fought it for years, but it changed everything completely. Is having a fixed process that you take every single client through, because then this section just kind of becomes a natural part of it. You prepare the client for it. Yeah, June, you got your hand up.
Yes, Dirk, thanks. Hi, everyone. Maybe just we do a lot of work on goal setting as well, and there was wonderful discussions already. So just one tool that I can maybe add, and I've heard some lifestyle areas already mentioned, but we a lot of times use a goal setting process with the approach from the Wheel of Life or Wheel of Balance, where you've got these segments of a lifestyle area where a client works through, where they, let's say, they rank their current satisfaction levels with these different areas in their life. They can articulate to you what these different areas mean. What does money mean to you? What does family mean to you? How do you spend your time there? How do you spend your resources there? So how satisfied are you? And then we do a priority rating in terms of what would be important and what is it that you would like to achieve. And you can put in a money lens. So we use that. It's just a tool. You don't have to use it with everyone, but if it's really difficult for clients to articulate, it's a process to take them through the different areas and question into that and find out what's really, really important to them. And something else that we've also kind of just learned over the years for myself is to understand the motivation behind anything that's important to a client and a goal, because goals could be very superficial. Clients are willing to give them up if life happens. So it's understanding the motivation behind that goal, because it's actually the motivation that's important. And what this also helps with is, let's say life happens and the client can't achieve that goal anymore. If you understand the motivation, how can you replace that goal with something that's, that would be applicable to the client in that point in time, if it's still something that's important, because you understand the motivation. It might be, if I can give an example of that. So a lot of times when we work with planners, you'll have grandparents that gives a lot of money for grandchildren. Okay. And if you look at their planning, it's not really helping their financial plan, supporting grandchildren financially or children financially. So if you look at the motivation, she wants to give off herself. She wants to leave a legacy. So is there any other way that you can maybe give a legacy, give your support without it having a financial impact on yourself? And in some instances, what people would say, if you give of your time, if you give off something else, but it's understanding the motivation behind the goal, which will also, it brings insight to a client as well. They never think about it that way, or not, they don't always think about it that way. So it's helping them to unpack that as well in terms of, what makes this important to me. I thought I'll just add that.
Yeah, June, what I like about that, what kind of that wheel of life thing is that you're approaching it from, so you're not using the word goals, you're actually approaching it from different emotional areas in their life, which people can say, like, you know, I'm working too hard, or I don't see enough of my family. And then you can go deep and say, well, okay, what would you like that to look like? What do we need to do to fix that side? So I think we haven't, I've seen it, but we haven't used it. But that actually, it does make a lot of sense, because you're attacking it from kind of the more personal, emotional side, which some people will react a lot better to. Okay, Simon, got your hand up.
How's it, guys? Sorry for dropping off there. Just had some computer issues. I just wanted to make a comment. I really enjoyed listening to Peter's approach, and the reason being is that I follow quite a similar approach, which, I mean, I think when you talk it through, although it sounds quite self-explanatory, that's our job. I put a lot of effort to get through those steps that he mentioned. So Dirk, many years back, you had an Excel sheet with a budget template and assets and things like that. And I took that and slightly adapted it and tied that in with your onboarding meeting, making sure that when you get through that onboarding meeting, you and your client both know that it's a partnership, and that you make sure they're aware how important it is to bring their part to the table so that you can actually do proper work. And if you can't see, a fit there, then already, you're not going to be able to tackle the more abstract things like goal setting, because you need, like Dirk said, if you've got to do cash flow planning, you need that information. As boring as it is, you have to know that person's picture. And even if they go sort of halfway of completing it, it means that they're serious enough that when you get to your next meeting to maybe go on to goal setting, you've got this framework that you can then refine. Maybe they misinterpreted a question, or they've given, values that are a bit outlandish and didn't quite understand, and you kind of refine that. But once you've been able to use that information, what I often do is that's your framework. So especially in the early parts of your relationship with the client, they're not going to, like many of you've mentioned, the questions, the deeper goal setting, they're left with not really having any answer for you as yet. But once you kind of set them on a path of achieving, just a framework of that can be sort of specified over time, you can get more specific and change things as you go. I think for me, one of the biggest responsibilities we have is that a lot of this information can be overwhelming for a client and they don't know how to answer it. I often start with collecting all that information and as soon as possible, showing them their current position. I know it sounds really sort of straightforward and boring or old school, but look at your picture on death, look at your picture on disability and so on. Are you happy with those right now? Were you able to even quantify that or see that in your head before you then start changing to goal setting? I find that often just the budgets, seeing those values in a simplified format, help a client see their current picture, and that often can create things. And the other thing was, someone mentioned it earlier, is good questioning and being able to then listen to those questions. So I often think of ChatGPT. It's such a powerful tool, but if you cannot prompt it, you can't get the questions out. And it's a very similar concept for me with clients. Clients don't know what questions or the answers they need to give you. You need to prompt them in the most sort of appropriate manner in a meeting by overlaying it with the behavioral stuff and understanding and reading the room and all those things. But you've got to be able to know what questions to probe to get the right answer so that you can actually help them. We always say you don't know what you don't know. So a client can't really put it all. That's our job, is to kind of be the middleman to help them. So I heard some awesome answers. I've written a couple of things from everyone here. I found that hugely valuable. So thanks everyone.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, no, you mentioned something also very interesting there. I'm in a situation where I'm getting more and more kind of clients where they know they've got enough money. So that's like not the problem. So they know, but there's always, and so sometimes I'm realizing and this maybe not only high net worth individuals, but sometimes, and that's why one of our questions is there anything that's pressing right now? Sometimes you've got to go and just solve that problem right now, because the person won't have the headspace to look deeper unless they they know they're going to be okay. We know people want to know that they're going to be okay, and the cash flow planning model does that. So that's all about the numbers. And that's why I think then later on, kind of bring them more into the let's call it the lifestyle questions, where we're exploring a little deeper about their life. I've got 2 guys I'm talking to at the moment where guys we're talking like hundreds of millions, and they're missing something in their lives. They're not happy, and like you look at this and how the hell can you guys not be absolutely ecstatic every morning when you wake up? And it's because they worked so hard their whole lives, and now there's fundamental basics that they don't have. And I promise you, it's sometimes it's harder for those guys to get to the realization. So where I'm leading to with this is goal setting is, so we'll call it goal setting because we hate the word, but everyone understands what we mean. But I promise you, this is probably the biggest part of what we do, because again, with AI, the financial plan will be done, probably can be done already better than we could do it by computers. Okay, the tax implications, the cash flow planning, put the data in there, it's going to kick it out. So when I started doing cash flow planning, it was really important. I can promise you, in 5 years' time, if that is your value proposition, you're going to be out of business, because you're going to have to offer a hell of a lot more than that. And the scary part is that it is the part where we have to learn how to dig deeper. And and I mean, I've started reading a book about purpose, and I cottoned onto it from another book I read a while ago. Was it Megan Lurtz or someone who summarized a whole lot of things? It was really good. But it really, really is important. Like I identify these 2 guys that they really don't understand what their purpose is. And they can go on big overseas holidays, and they can drive fancy cars, and they can do all these things, but that it doesn't fill that hole, So I think, to end, I think goal setting is really important, however we do it. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. I think what's important that if you're not doing it in some form, you really need to look at yourself, because you could be out of business in a few years' time. People aren't going to hire us for our technical skills much anymore, unless we're a specialist tax lawyer or whatever. And to be honest, we can bring those people into the fold. It's going to be more about how do we help people uncover what are those things in life that are really important to them, and then make them help their best life with whatever they've got. So yeah, Shannon, your hands up.
Yeah, Dirk, it's just something that when I chat to clients, I say there are 3 columns that a successful financial life is underpinned by. And that is having a meaningful sense of purpose, meaningful relationships, and meaningful experiences. And again, in terms of the financial planning, we constantly go back and revise. What is your meaningful sense of purpose? What are your meaningful relationships? And what are your meaningful experiences that you want out of life?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, we all know that. So the study done, that Harvard study, that's what has allowed people to live a good, healthy, happy life has been relationships, healthy relationships, personal relationships, be that with family or be that with friends. So no, I'd agree with that completely. Guys, we're out of time. Thank you everyone for participating and for joining. I'll when the recording's ready, I'll put it on the group. But yeah, guys, have a great February. Well, it's nearly over, but enjoy what's left of it.
Thanks, Dirk. Thanks, guys.
Cheers all. Thanks very much.
Cheers, everyone.